Sometimes God has to knock you on your back in order to get you to look up. Today as we look at the story of Jonah that we read in Jonah 2, this is a part of Jonah that I think is probably the best known, not only of the book, but one of the best known stories in all the Bible. And I don't know about you, whenever I read this part of the Bible and kind of think about this story, the image that pops in my head is that picture of Pinocchio. Remember that old cartoon where Pinocchio's thrown into the sea and then the big whale comes and swallows him, and then later he's just kind of thrown back up out again. But this was the kind of thing that was pictured for generations. In fact, in the early Christian church, the picture of Jonah being vomited up from the fish was one of the most common pictures used. Here's a quote from an early Christian writing. It says, "He who brought Jonah alive and unharmed out of the belly of the whale after 3 days, the 3 youths of the furnace of Babylon, and Daniel out of the mouths of lions, does not lack power to raise us up as well." You see, in early Christian tombs, before the Emperor Constantine, back when they were still being persecuted in large numbers, the image of Jonah was the most popular image to have on people's graves. And it's because it is a clear picture of how God saves us. And it's ironic because it's God's desire to save, which is the whole reason Jonah is running in the first place. The whole reason he's offended at God. The whole reason he wants nothing to do with being his prophet anymore. And yet, finally, it ends up being what Jonah needed most. You see, God had to knock Jonah on his back so that he would finally look up. And until that happened, all Jonah was going to do was run. This in Jonah 2, what we're going to read, is the first time we see Jonah pray. He doesn't pray when God calls him to go and be his prophet. Instead, he runs. He doesn't pray when the storm begins. Instead, he goes below and goes to sleep. He doesn't even pray when the captain asks him to pray. It's only when he's sunk to the bottom of the sea and swallowed by this fish that finally Jonah prays. And finally he sees that he too needed a God who saves. We read in Jonah chapter 1, "Now the Lord provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. From inside the fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord his God. He said, 'In my distress I called to the Lord, and he answered me. From deep in the realm of the dead I called for help, and you listened to my cry.'" Now, maybe you might call this foxhole religion, but at the end of the day, isn't it the same with us? How often doesn't God have to shake our confidence in everything else? Sometimes even take things away so that finally we'll understand that it's his mercy that we rely on. It's exactly what Philip Melanchthon said, a Lutheran dogmatician, a long, long time ago. He said, "Every confidence is futile except a confidence in mercy. Mercy preserves us. Our own merits and our own efforts do not preserve us." In order for Jonah to get that, he had to be thrown off that boat and fall to the heart of the sea. In order for Paul to get that, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 1, "We do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt we had received the sentence of death. But this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. He has delivered us from such a deadly peril, and he will deliver us again. On him we set our hope that we will continue to deliver as you help by your prayers. Then many will give thanks on our behalf for the gracious favor granted us in answer to the prayers of many." For us, today you'll have an opportunity to talk about some of the struggles that oftentimes we face that have a way of getting our attention, that have a way of knocking us on our back so that we look up. But for Jonah, finally the time had come where he was ready to be the prophet God called him to be. There he was, covered in vomit, just having been thrown up by that fish standing on the shore. And yet now he was ready. But once again, this is how it always goes. Consider what the Apostle Paul writes about himself as prophet in 2 Corinthians 4. "But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. We're hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body. For we who are alive are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that his life may be revealed in our mortal body. So then death is at work in us, but life is at work in you." You see, Jonah was just another in a long line of clay pots, of people who are God's messengers, who have flaw upon flaw, and yet who, in spite of their weakness and their struggles, God uses to show his glory, the power of his word to change hearts. Today you'll have an opportunity to consider how sometimes, like Jonah, God has to knock us on our back. How God uses those situations to point us to his mercy, and how he saves, so that we can say along with Jonah at the end of our section today, "But I with shouts of grateful praise will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed I will make good. I will say salvation comes from the Lord." Lord's blessings on your study.